right, guys. Joining us today, always the great roast battle champion himself from Comedy Central, Earl Skakel. Earl, how are you?
I am, feel like I'm living in a fantasy camp right now, so I'm happy.
So we have the iconic actor, William Katt, with us today, and I could not do this podcast without Earl because this is one of your biggest fans, Mr. Katt.
No way. Awesome. Earl. Here, I'll toast you with a bottle of water.
Let me get a bottle of Bang Energy drink.
There you go. Okay.
Now, Mr. Katt, we're both comics, and Earl lives in Los Angeles. He lives in West Hollywood. He's a Comedy Store regular, and we just have this weird knowledge, this pop culture knowledge. So we pretty much grew up with you. Like, you are a part of us in our 40s and our 50s. Like,
oh, thanks, dude. Yeah.
Does that
feel old? Now I need a glass of wine. Okay. No, I'm kidding. No, that's great. Just like to be recognized for anything you do, you know?
Well, I want you to know I once bought a $1,250 Laserdisc player to solely watch Big Wednesday. So,
holy Christ.
That movie was so iconic to me.
Now let's get into this. Let's get into Big Wednesday.
You know, Basil Polidoris was such a great composer, and the score on that film was just freaking amazing. It was so wonderful.
We're just going to dive into Big Wednesday because this has been a part of my life. Earl has such an affection for it. Okay. And growing up, I mean, like, what was it like playing that role? How did you get that role? Let's get nerdy. Let's get really nerdy right now.
Well, you and I are both from Sherman Oaks. I mean, that's where I grew up too. We went, some of us here have gone to the same schools, in fact. But I started surfing when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I learned to surf down at Brook Street in Laguna Beach with a buddy of mine, Tommy, and surfed, down there. And I was like a regular in Malibu. I'd go to Malibu before school many days a week, going to class completely sandy, and much to the chagrin of whoever was sitting next to me. But yeah, I grew up being a surfer, and it was really kind of cathartic for me when I got that role. I remember my dad telling me early on I could never make a living with my surfboard, and I proved him wrong. I said, hey, dude, I'm making a living with my surfboard.
And your parents were actors too, right?
Yes, they were. Bill Williams, a very well-known cowboy, pretty much for Kit Carson. And my mom was Barbara Hale, who was best known for Della Street on the award-winning Perry Mason series many, many years ago. I think from 55 to 63. I mean, and I grew up on both their sets, Kit Carson and Perry Mason. That was like a holiday to get out of school and go down to the set and hang out, have coffee and eat donuts and hang out on all the equipment and climb up there on the old Mitchell cameras learn how to do the wheels, the figure eights with the old wheels, It was pretty bitchin'. Yeah, it was a great childhood.
What was it like working with your mom in Big Wednesday? Because she was the house mom in the party scene, and she was very funny in it.
She was very funny. She told the story that when she walked in to meet John Milius, the writer-director, she said, well, John, you can't tell me that I don't fit the part. Because she was my mom. Actually, you know what? We worked together before that. She did 2 episodes, or after that, she did 2 episodes of Greatest American Hero. Years after Big Wednesday. And then we worked again on the Masons for almost 5 years together.
Now, I'm not familiar with Greatest American Hero, so let's talk Big Wednesday.
Okay.
What are you talking about? It's an iconic show.
I know. I'm being funny, Earl. We're comedians. Damn it. So what other Big Wednesday questions you have, Earl? Because you love that movie so much.
Well, if you could talk about the cast, because it's such an iconic cast. Obviously, you, Gary Busey, Jan Michael Vincent, and your Carrie castmate, the great Michael Talbot.
Freddie
Krueger, Robert Englund.
Earl, don't you know Gary Busey, Earl?
I've done a few comedy shows with him. He, let's just say, Meeting him once was enough.
Okay, there you go.
No, I love him. I mean,
he's a great guy. You know what? He plays that guy that's crazier than a June bug, but he's really freaking. He's like a Rhodes Scholar. He's so smart.
Oh, absolutely. I think I got too caught up, and I said, "Hey, are they ever going to do a sequel to Big Wednesday, like where maybe you play Bear or a bear-like character?" And that's another cast, Sam Melville. And he's like, "What the hell would they do a sequel to that movie for?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I guess not."
Yes. Oh, Sam. God, we lost Sam early on. And who else was in that film? Daryl Fetty, who went on to be a award-winning writer and producer in his own right, and Reb Brown, who had many successful film ventures.
Yeah, I think, and of course, Robert Englund. He had a very kind of a small part, but
he narrated the entire film. I mean, that was his voice narrating the film.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Robert.
Wow.
And funny story is, I met Robert many years before that. Because I had a fairly extensive theater career on stage. And I met Robert at the Center Theater Group, downtown Los Angeles. We were both part of De Guiche's Men in the great play Cyrano de Bergerac that Richard Chamberlain was starring in. And we met doing that, and we had a wonderful time. We've stayed friends all these years. He's a lovely guy.
I mean, I guess the one question I had, if you said, Earl, you can ask him one more question.
No, I want to know the whole process of getting the role. He was obviously a surfer. His parents were actors. But Earl, what's your next question?
Well, it pained me that movie didn't do as good as I think it should have. And I look back and go, well, maybe it was a surf movie. It's maybe a hard sell to the mainstream American audience.
At the time, it was a Warner Brothers film. I think it had a significant budget. It was like $8 million, I think, at the time, which was fairly hefty in the late 70s. And what happened when it came out, it was panned by the critics. But in the years that ensued after that, when they came out with DVDs and whatnot, it became a cult classic. And I know that it did very, very well in the ensuing 20 years after that. The funny thing is that John Milius and Steven Spielberg, and who was it?
George Lucas,
they all traded points in each other's film. And they were all very chagrined that John's film failed, and both their films did so well. But I think they've made amends, and I think Big Wednesday did all right in all these years afterwards.
So how does all three of you handsome guys in the 70s? I mean, Jan Michael Vincent was a gorgeous man, and he was like the Brad Pitt of the 70s. Like, how did you all get casted? How did that all come together? And talk about that situation.
I was coming off of Carrie. That was pretty successful at the time. Of course. It was kind of a B film that became mainstream. I remember being in Newsweek and Time Magazine the same week, which was pretty amazing. It really launched my career. And it was also a seminal film for Mr. De Palma, for Brian. And in fact, I would say for Sissy and all of us, we all garnered careers out of that film. And we've all worked ever since. But I came out of that. I did a film at Paramount, less well known, a film with Susan Day called First Love. And then a year after that, I was called into Warner Brothers to meet John. And I sat down with John and Gary and Jan. We sat on a couch and we just shot the shit for, gee whiz, an hour. And we all seemed to get along. We all fit the parts, Gary was playing this out of control, eccentric guy, and Jan Michael was playing a guy on the brink, and I was kind of playing the straight and narrow guy. And it all kind of worked out. We all kind of, when you think back on our lives, we all kind of became those roles. You know, I was from the Valley. I went back to the Valley. I gave up the water and went back to the Valley. Gary he played out that crazy part. I don't even know what to say about Gary. He's great. And Jan, God bless Jan, rest in peace. You know, he was a lovely man who just, he fell prey to his demons, should we say, you know?
Yeah. Go ahead, Earl.
Right. It really is almost scary how the three of you, like you just said, morphed into your characters from the movie in real life. And but do you think, I know when Stallone said he made Rambo, he got a lot of resistance because no one wanted to see a movie about Vietnam. Do you think the Vietnam storyline maybe hampered the box office performance just because it got pretty heavy in the middle part?
I don't think so. I mean, when you look at that sequence, that's probably one of my favorite sequences in the film. You know, Daryl Fetty and Busey and all those guys, they go down to the draft board and Gary Busey, you know, combing his hair with a fish. And by the way, that whole sequence on the chair when he was lighting the cigarettes, can I have another one? Yes, another. All that stuff, that was totally improv. Totally improv.
Wow.
And it was like one of the best. And then he gets up and screams and goes through the wall. Come on, that was classic. That's classic Gary Busey.
I loved the guy who played the doctor in that, Joe Svanell, who's, you know, another great character actor. And
Great character actor. Yeah.
I cry every time they line up when you guys are watching TV at your house and everyone lines up and says goodbye.
And, you know, in the beginning, you know, I don't know if people realize that the gentleman, forgive me, I forget his name, who played Shopping Cart, the older gentleman.
Oh, right.
He was a favorite of John Ford and in the old John Ford films. And that was John Milius paying homage to John Ford.
Right.
You know?
Now I got I said you were going to be on the podcast today, so I put a thing out to the listeners, and Ashley wanted to know, and I don't think you can see it, but it says Matt's dog in the credits, Brian Damage Vincent. What's that situation? Do you know anything about it?
That was Jan's real dog at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, he wandered into the shot one day, and they just kept it after that. You know, so many things were accidental, and they just kept it. You know.
What would you say the party scene where, of course, your Carrie castmate Michael Talbot comes in and crashes, and then Reb Brown, and you're making out with Patty D'Arbanville? Would you say that was the funnest scene to shoot?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You know, Michael Talbot got his jaw broken by Gary Busey in that. when he comes to the door, Gary Busey hauls off and hits him, and he broke his fucking jaw or his nose, one or the other. I can't remember, but that really happened.
Wow.
I mean, that punch did seem pretty realistic.
It was real. It was real. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We shot that on the lot at MGM, you know.
You guys probably over the years have probably more or less, you know, it's like you said, a cult favorite, and obviously us nerds are talking to you right now. But I mean, to this day, do you still get blown away how that meant so much to people? Yeah,
you know, it was kind of it did, and I think because it was a lost time, it was really just a thin ribbon of life on the coast, and but it really represented it very well. And the film, people talked about it as if it was a surf film, but really it was a film about friendship and a really a time in life that was will never come again. I mean, it was the late 60s, early 60s to the late 60s. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Earl?
Well, it's so weird. Like, someone asked me, why do you like a surf movie if you don't surf yourself? And I'm like, to me, it's not really a surf movie. I mean, surfing is the background.
Right.
It's kind of like there's a football movie called North Dallas 40,
right,
which really wasn't a football movie. It was just about how the power struggle between owners and players and the evilness. So it just meant so much to me. And what was the reaction like when, you know, the movie might not have been doing as well at the box office? Was there like, they're not promoting it correctly, or?
No, I don't know. It was just, there was always a fear that that's what would happen. And I know at the time, my God, I wish you could have read the script, because the script was masterful. It was just so rhapsodic, so beautiful to read. And again, I think Robert Englund did such a magnificent job in speaking the narrative. We were all disappointed, but time has a way of making things better, and it did for that film. And I'm so thankful that we did the film, and it meant so much to so many people. Not like Point Break or Blue Crush. It's a much different kind of feeling. It's really much more romantic than either of those films.
I want to give a shout out to the great Ron Bennington.
Not to cast disparaging remarks about those films, because they were very good.
Yeah.
No.
Earl, real quick, let me give a shout out to the great Ron Bennington on Sirius XM, because every time I do a show in New York, we talk Big Wednesday every single time. So Ron Bennington, this one's for you. I'm going to send you the link when it's put up. We got William Katt here. We're doing it. Earl, go ahead.
Well, it's funny because it's probably leads into maybe the next subject we're talking to, but I also love the surf movie, The North Shore.
Great film. Yeah.
But like Big Wednesday, it's like the Star Wars of surf films. It's just, there's Big Wednesday.
Earl, where are you going with this? Where are you going with this?
Well,
I'm just curious. Where's the segue?
Well, the segue is Mr. Katt, I believe, auditioned for the role of Luke Skywalker, and I wanted to know, obviously at the time of the audition, did you have any idea, or did anyone have any idea how monstrous that movie would become?
No. We just all felt, at the time I was a struggling young actor, going between $275 a week at the Mark Taper Forum and then back to unemployment and living between the two of those, and I had a little bit of success in some television episodics and things. I think my biggest break came with Angie Dickinson. I was in the pilot of Policewoman, and I got a lot of heat from that. And that kind of propelled me into some of the auditions that came there.
How hot was she back in her prime?
Dude, I got to sit in an elevator for 3 days and have my arms around her.
Wow. And
you win.
So,
you win.
So hot. I win.
We all lose.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But anyway, to digress for 1 second, at the time, George, Lucas, and Brian, who were both very good friends, they were casting together. They said, let's see everybody that's available. So they brought in all the young actresses that were up and coming, and they brought in all of the young actors that were up and coming. And we went through a series of auditions, but neither one of us had any idea. I had seen a couple of Brian's films, Get to Know Your Rabbit, Hi Mom, a couple things he did with Bobby De Niro when Bob De Niro was first doing comedy. It's funny that he came back around that at the end of his career to start doing a little bit of comedy at the end of his career.
Wait, he was doing comedy first, Bob De Niro?
Oh, dude, yeah. Go back and watch some of those early Brian De Palma films. Bob was very funny.
Wow.
Mr. De Niro. Yeah.
Interesting.
But anyway, so we came in and we did this audition, but we didn't know what was going to happen. And I, looking at it 20 years down the road, I thought my audition was pretty good. I did it with Kurt Russell. We did the on-screen stuff. And I thought we both did pretty well,
You guys would have made a good Skywalker and Solo, you two.
I think my hair was too long. But listen, nobody is trying for Kurt Russell. He's done pretty damn good.
Well, I think you've done okay yourself, though. So
I've had all right. I've done all right.
It was, because that role was, I think Burt Reynolds auditioned for Han Solo, Christopher Walken.
Wow. I didn't know
believe Perry King, I think, might have auditioned with you for
Perry King from Riptide.
Riptide, yeah, I remember he was one of the Cannell boys. There's a whole tribe of actors and behind the scenes people, editors, producers, line producers, production managers that came out of that Cannell camp, because he did so many series and he was so loyal and such a good guy. And there's probably hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people that came out of that Steve Cannell camp.
Wow. Go ahead, Earl.
Well, do you find, because you are a very good-looking man, but do you find your looks hamper you in some?
Let me pull my face back here. Now I probably look better, right?
No, you look amazing. You got your hair, you know.
Lucky, I'm still lucky with that. Yeah,
Mr. Katt won life.
Yeah.
You really won the life lottery. But you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, like, you were such a model-looking guy. Did your looks hamper you when you were auditioning for roles?
You know, I'm not quite sure. I had a pretty good career in the theater. Truth be told, I was having a great career in the theater. I was always doing theater when I wasn't doing television or film. And I think the moment that I pivot really was when I did Greatest American Hero. I was unable to.
Again, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, with the exception of Pippin, which I got as a result of that, because I had auditioned for Bob Fosse and Stu Ostral, the producer, many times. When I finally came in to audition for them the last time, I walked to the piano and Mr. Fosse was saying this. I said, Mr. Fosse, I've auditioned for you so many times. Do I really have to do this again? He said, no, you got the role. So that was fun. But with that exception, it kind of turned my career, and I think I was unable to get the roles that I wanted to get thereafter for at least 10 years after, because of playing that superhero. It's so ironic that today everybody wants those big tentpole franchises, you know. All the actors want that big franchise, you know.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I had John Schneider and Tom Wopat on, and I've had a lot of iconic guys. And you guys were on TV when TV was TV. Like, you had how many 60 million, like, ridiculous, like, there's a couple channels. I mean, you were like the face. I mean, what was it like during that time in Hollywood, just living your life and doing that role?
What was it like? I don't know.
I mean, would you get recognized nonstop?
Oh yeah. Hey, I'd get on a plane and the pilots would come out and say hello, or the stewardesses go, "Oh my God, I'm glad you're flying with us. Now we feel safe." And you know, they were just having a lot of fun with it, you know. But I was a youngster, and I don't think I handled fame as well as I might have. You know, I think at times I was pretty much a dick to some people. And I really regretted that. I should have had somebody slap me in the face and say, "Hey, just be, you know, you are blessed, be grateful, say thank you, and let's get on with things." But I didn't have that for some reason, and I regret some of my stupidity at the time. But learned my lesson. I went on, and I'm grateful now that I had that show.
Well, Mr. Katt, I don't know if you're familiar with Earl Skakel, but he's the roast battle champion on Comedy Central. And Earl had the same mistakes. Like, he didn't handle that fame very well.
Wow.
You're getting recognized, and, you know, it kind of went to your head, Earl, right?
Well, I wish, first of all, I'll guess Mr. Katt is not familiar with me, but it's all good. Can you talk about auditioning for Greatest American Hero? Because, like you said, you're coming from primarily a theater background.
Yeah.
You know, you're a quote-unquote serious actor, and you get this audition for I guess a pretty wacky sitcom. Was that hard for you to go from serious to?
Well, I did. It was my ego at the time. You know, I was young and full of myself. My ego wouldn't fit in this room at the time. You know, that's how bad it was. And
I mean, well, how could you at the time with so many millions of people watching you? I mean, it's kind of goes with the territory. So that'd be a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But let me get back. The question was, what about the audition? Truth be told, I did not audition for that role. I mean, Steve Cannell came to me, my agent, Michael Black, at the time at ICM, sent me the script. I thought it was very funny. But I said I wasn't interested in doing television. At the time, I was on stage off Broadway with the wonderful Diana Wiest, who was starring in this wonderful play, Michel Tremblay's Bonjour la Bonjour. And we were at the Phoenix Repertory off Broadway, and I was happy to be in New York, and I was working. I was a working actor. I got this script, and I think the only reason that I really thought about it, because I had a son that was about 8 months old, and I was making, $400 a week in New York, barely able to make a living. And they told me, my agent said, Bill, it's going to run. Maybe it'll do a pilot and they'll order 3 or 4 shows. Then you'll be done and you can go back to New York and you can stay on the stage and work there. And of course, that's not what happened. And Steve Cannell flew out and he met with me after an afternoon performance one day. And he took me out to dinner at the Russian Tea Room. And he was such a lovely man, so gracious, so kind, so self-effacing, and he made me feel so comfortable that I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So the day I finished on a Sunday afternoon matinee, I flew to New York, and the next day I had my hair dyed back to my natural color blonde because it was brown at the time. I was playing a French Canadian in the play. I had it dyed back blonde, and I went into I met everybody there, Alex Beaton and the rest of the producer and the staff, and they were all just so lovely. They treated me like a real celebrity, like a god, and I felt so at home. If you had the great pleasure of meeting Stephen Cannell, he was one of the greatest guys that ever walked the planet. Other than my father, he left the highest watermark on my life of anybody. I just love the guy.
Now, before we started the podcast, we found out you and Earl went to the same high school. Now, let's talk about this.
Okay. Crazy sisters and brothers, right?
Yeah, I mean, 6 degrees of separation at Notre Dame High, corner of Riverside and Woodman.
Oh, my God. Woo! Crazy school. You get beat with a stick by the sisters.
Yeah, I mean, I got the brothers were a little rough on me. But, that was the mid-80s.
What happened. Well, just looking at you, I can see why they were rough on you,
Well, I was a bit of a wild card, This was, it's the early 80s,
Well, yeah. Mr. Katt, let me tell you this. Earl's background, he doesn't talk about it, but he's related to the Kennedys.
No way!
Yes. My aunt is Ethel Kennedy. As you can see, it's really helped my comedy career.
That's funny. That's very, very funny.
Well, she's still alive, which is crazy. So
that is crazy. So what she think about the current the state of the country right now? She's got to be.
She's pretty depressed. She's I'm not very political myself, but let's just say she's not a big Trump fan. But she's. I
don't know. We're gonna see what happens pretty soon.
Yeah. So you guys are both in LA right now, and I moved out of there. Like, how you guys holding up out there? Like, what's the situation like?
Dude, it was 121 degrees in the valley here about 3 weeks ago. Tell me, when I was a kid, if it got to be 105 in the summer, that was a big deal, right? Yeah. That was like really rare. But this last summer, 3 weeks ago, for like several days, it was like 119, then 121. It was like, are you excuse me?
No, please swear.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Please swear.
I couldn't leave my house, and my shrubs and the trees, they've all just gone, bleh, they've had it.
Wow.
So we're not cactus, dude. We're not cactus.
Earl, you're in West Hollywood. What's it like in West Hollywood?
It's very hot. I mean, I know you're in the Valley, William, so it's probably 15 degrees hotter for you. But and unfortunately, this ain't the 70s anymore. The ocean in Santa Monica is pretty dirty, so you can't even go in there for relief.
I know.
You want to get hepatitis.
I know.
Do you ever go surf anymore?
No, I don't. Well, the water is so dirty, but no, I don't. I have my boards still hanging up in the garage. I have my board from Big Wednesday and a couple other sticks, and but I don't. I haven't had time, and I don't live right on the ocean. I'm still in Woodland Hills, so I'm about 20 minutes from the beach, 25 minutes.
Woodland Hills. I used to go to that Equinox over there in Woodland Hills.
Oh yeah.
Very
right
familiar.
Here.
Yeah.
Closed like everything else,
It's so weird because I'm in Florida right now where they pretty much are ignoring everything. They're just like, okay, business as usual. So it's very strange to hear how separated everyone is. I know people are like, all right, like get back to the greatest American hero. But listen, I'm having a podcast conversation with one of our heroes. Relax.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get back to the greatest American hero, because one of my first crushes was Connie Salica. Damn, you're a lucky man.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, when that gal would walk into a room, heads would turn. Jet black hair, striking green eyes, a goddess's face, and one of the nicest women and the funniest people you have ever met in your life.
I mean, she was iconically beautiful that time frame in the 70s, early 80s.
I can tell you, she's still beautiful. We don't speak all the time, but 2 or 3 times a year we text and exchange pictures and stuff of our kids and grandkids, and she's still just absolutely gorgeous. Married to John Tesh, by the way. I was at their wedding. They've been
really
many, many years now, 30 years, maybe more than 30 years they've been married. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I once gave John Tesh a free membership at the Sports Connection. I was so starstruck.
He's a really nice guy, too. Awesome guy. Great keyboard player. Wonderful man. And just a beautiful partner for Connie to go through life with.
Do you ever see Michael Pare walking around the Valley?
It's been a few years since I've seen Michael. I think since 2008. So it's been that long. It's been over 10 years since I've seen Michael. I'm still great friends with Dennis Matalone, our stunt coordinator on Greatest American Hero. We are still very tight, very close. And several other people I stay in touch with from Greatest American Hero. But, it's a long time ago. And unfortunately, we're losing some here and there.
Why? Let me ask you this: why hasn't Hollywood? They remake everything now. Why has that not been remade with Will Ferrell at this point? Like, why has that not been touched? That show
years ago, it was touted that it was going to be done with Owen Wilson, which I thought would have been a great match.
I could see that.
And then it was Shia LaBeouf, who I've always been a huge fan of Shia. I think he's a wonderful actor who can play both comedy and drama, and he can ride that fence. He's so good. And then it went away for a long time. There were scripts. Cannell had a script. There was another couple scripts. It was at Disney for a while. Then it went into Turnaround. It was bought by 20th Century. Funny enough, Disney now owns all the library of 20th Century Fox. But it was made 2 years ago. They made it with a gal in the lead, a very funny gal, quite attractive. I believe she was an young East Indian gal. And my friend George Wendt, I'm friends with George Wendt, and he was one of the regulars on that show. And he said, Bill, it was a very good show, very funny, but they made it a half-hour show instead of an hour.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it didn't work. They asked me to do a voiceover, and I graciously declined. I just said, I'm sorry. I just have too much integrity and dignity toward the original show. I can't just do a voiceover. You know?
So what happens when that iconic
wasn't picked up? They didn't pick it up.
What happens when that iconic theme song comes on at the grocery store? Like, what do you do? Just, oh my God, you're attached to that song forever.
Oh, I start singing it and I wave my hands. Believe it or not. Oh yeah. I do all that stuff.
You pull out the guitar in the back and start jamming out.
There you go.
Do you think the song was almost too big and hurt the show? Because
I always wondered, was it the show that helped the song, or was it the song that helped the show? I don't know, because the song was giant. It's still in rotation on a lot of radio stations.
And that just goes back to TV in general. Like, those theme songs back then are so iconic. Like, I can't even name like a theme song now, but I can sing the Dukes of Hazzard or Different Strokes. That's because
you just had John and Tom on the show, for God's sakes. Come on.
Or even just like Family Ties. Like, I know all those theme songs. So they're so iconic, but now it's just, I don't know. I think it meant something back then. I don't want to sound like back in my day, but back in my day, things were cooler.
Well, I think you were right, Chad, because like if you think back to when Greatest American Hero was on and Miami Vice a little later, like there's only 3 networks, and there was no CNN or no TNT and stuff like that, Hulu.
I think I think it was pretty cool back then, but it was you had the Cannells and the Dick Wolfs and the Aaron Spellings, and it was all those kind of shows. And nowadays, everything is taken a darker turn. You got to be dark to be cool, right? You got to be dark, and that's okay. I like that, but it was a different time. I must admit, I'm a fan of television right now. I think television is where you want to be if you're a writer, producer, director, or an actor. Gee, who doesn't want to get on a show that's running for 7 to 10 years?
Yeah, just get on the Walking Dead. You have you'll never get fired unless you get killed.
Yeah, they can't kill you off because you can't die. Yeah.
That's true. Now, Earl, we talked before the show here, and he says, "What are some auditions you didn't get that nobody might know of, like stuff that you tried out for that became iconic?"
Well, the
Star Wars, obviously.
The biggest one was Star Wars. Gee whiz, that's the biggest, and.
Did you ever try out for like a show like Miami Vice or something of that nature?
I tried to get on some of those shows, whatnot, and it didn't work. I did audition for Walking Dead, and I didn't get that. That was years ago when it was like in its second season. That's the biggest show I think that I've done that I didn't get.
Yeah. Go ahead, Earl.
No, well, when Greatest American Hero, kind of ran its course and got canceled, because I know some actors don't like being locked into a TV show, as crazy as it sounds, for 7, 8 seasons. Were you happy, sad, a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. And honestly, there was no such thing as Comic-Con then.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
There wasn't anything like that. So. I was kind of locked into wearing this red suit, and I think I was a little bit disappointed that I couldn't get the kind of dramatic roles that I would have liked to have done, particularly on stage, and I was a little bit resentful because of that, so I was happy that the show was ending. Years later, I was... I really missed the fact that I didn't understand how happy the show made a lot of kids and a lot of people. That years later, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, I didn't get along with my parents at all, but every Wednesday night I could sit down and with my parents, my dad and I would laugh out loud at the same show, and it made me feel so good." And I didn't realize that at the time. So shame on me for that. Shame on me. But at the time when the show ended, I was happy. I knew I was already I I started a national tour right after that with the late, great George Rose in Pirates of Penzance. I did a national tour. And right after that, Raymond Burr called me. And he said, hey, we're rebooting the series, and your mom's going to be in it playing Della, and we'd love you to come play Paul Dre. And so I went and I did that. Coincidentally enough, it wasn't but 6 months later, I got a call from the head of, I'm trying to think of this gentleman's name. Tannenbaum? No, I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, one of the heads of the network called to say, hey, Bill, we're going to put you back on the show. We're going to double your salary and guarantee you 2 years on the air. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it because I was already locked into doing the series, these episodes. But that would have been fun to do. That would have been fun to do because the show was doing so well in syndication and reruns that they wanted to reboot the show. I wish I had done that,
Yeah.
Sure.
I wish I had been able to do that.
Now, you said your father was on Gunsmoke?
No. He played Kit Carson.
Oh, okay.
With Don Diamond. It was in the late 50s. It was the same thing. Hopalong Cassidy and all those kind of 50 Westerns, Yeah, he was cool, man. I grew up. My first memory is sitting under a horse watching him shoot something, being on the set there. It was great. We had horses. He had a gold stallion that he kept in our backyard. We grew up in Sherman Oaks when it was still all kind of dairy farms and orange orchards. You were too young, obviously, but when I grew up in the early 50s, that's what it was. I mean, it was big open spaces. And we had a big place out there at the time. That's what I remember. Yeah.
Were you ever able to get on those like Western shows like Bonanza or Rawhide?
One of the first things I did was with Clint Eastwood on Rawhide. My dad was doing an episode of Rawhide, and I got to be a little 12-year-old kid on that show. And I had a scene with Clint.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
I felt lucky.
Yeah. No, we just had Craig Kilborn, who used to do the Late Late Show on the podcast, and he had Clint Eastwood on, and he says, I've never been starstruck until I met Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Pretty neat.
I mean, my mom had dinner with Clint Eastwood when she was pregnant with me, and she told him at the end of the dinner, you'll never make it. You're too nice. So my mom would have been a horrible agent.
You would.
Speaking of Westerns, let's get to Butch and Sundance, the early days.
Okay.
How did that role come about? And Tom Berenger, great actor. Was that a fun movie to work on?
That was real fun to work on. Yeah. Where did that come? I think both Tom and I turned that down several times because we didn't want people to think that we were undermining the great Paul Newman and Robert Redford.
Sure.
And at the time, I'm not sure, but I think we were the first prequel ever made. It was a prequel where you took those characters and you all of a sudden you did a pre-story. I might be corrected. Maybe one of the fans out there listening will have a better recollection of that. But I think we were one of the first prequels. And Tom and I both turned it down originally. And then they came back and made offers that we couldn't refuse. And I just had a wonderful time. I mean, I always said, most actors would say that, if we could do nothing but Westerns for the rest of our career, we would do that. Because it's so cool. You get to work outside. You're with the horses. The Wranglers are always so cool. Everybody is typically in a great mood. And it was great. The first night we were in Telluride, Tom and I, they rented us a beautiful chalet, and him and I spent 2 weeks together in that chalet. And the first night we got frickin' so loaded on tequila in the sauna. Nice. We were up all night, and we became good friends after that. He is truly a great guy. I was so happy to work with him. And you know what? I worked with him again. John Milius did a 2-part miniseries called Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. And I got to work with Tom again for 4 months, which was in Texas, which was just a great hoot. Him and Sam Elliott and Gary Busey, a lot of guys that I knew, and John Milius directing. It was a real boys club,
That's awesome.
You also got to work in this movie with a pre-RoboCop Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, oh my God. If you go back and you look at some of the cast in Butch and Sundance, all those people went on to have some. John Schuck was on that.
He was amazing.
We had a great cast in that film, and this is all before those guys became big stars, you know?
Brian Dennehy.
Yeah. Brian. Worked with him. I worked with Brian again. I can't remember what I worked with him on. What a great guy. Well, iconic, that gunfight in that town.
Yeah.
What they did is they boarded up a dam that was nearby. They built the town. And then just before we shot the big gunfight scene, they flooded the town with 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water. So the whole town was like flooded. And we did the gunfight in the water. It was pretty freaking amazing.
That's awesome.
It was great, man. It was great to play a cowboy, you know?
Now, let me ask you this, because I see a guitar behind you. I'm assuming you play the guitar.
I goof around with it, yeah.
All right, well, let's get a little topical. We lost the great Eddie Van Halen. Earl is the quintessential 80s rock guy. I mean,
yeah. Who could forget Eruption and that solo on that and all those great songs he came up with, and he was the one that brought the synthesizers to that band, you know, and that really rocked me when I read that the other day. Just rocked me.
Yeah. And they were Pasadena boys, from what I understand. Is that right, Earl?
Yeah, they played backyard barbecues in Pasadena.
Yeah.
And I guess Eddie was so scared that other guitar players would steal his moves in terms of the tapping he did, that he would play with his back turned to the crowd.
Yeah.
And people thought he was an asshole, but he didn't want anyone stealing his moves.
You know what? I felt like an idiot because on Michael Jackson's song "Beat It," I thought that was Steve Lukather playing that guitar lead, but I didn't realize it was him. You know?
Yeah, I think that was the only gig Steve Lukather lost out on. I mean, it's amazing how many he's played on thousands of albums, literally.
Him and who are the best guitar? Eddie Van Halen, Steve Lukather, Tim Pierce has played on so many freaking wonderful albums. All those guys. Oh my God! But Van Halen, man, what a shame! What a shame.
Yeah, I mean,
growing up in the time period that you grew up, I mean, were there like just iconic bands that you got to see? And maybe some of those bands knew who you were. Like, was there like a good memory?
Nobody knew who I was. You know, at the time I was hanging out at Sound City.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Sound City, but Joe Gottfried, who ran that studio.
I watched the Dave Grohl documentary on Sound City.
Yeah, there you go. Dave took that Neve console that was in Studio A. He took it and put it in his house or in his home studio. It's just amazing. Yeah, I was at that place. I was there all the time. I was buddies with frickin' everybody over there. And Paula Salvatore, who was over there for a while, she's been running Capitol Records forever. And Rick Springfield was over there. Rick and I were managed by the same guys over there. Joe Gottfried, and then later Dana Miller handled Rick. And oh yeah,
you and Springfield were probably like huge at the right exact same time, right?
Yeah, but he's still up there, dude.
Springfield's he's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
He's still rocking out. I saw a show in Florida just a year and a half ago, man. He was really great.
Yeah.
Well, let's give a quick shout out to Neil Giraldo, who actually did the guitar solo in Jesse's Girl from Pat Benatar's band. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to be wrapping this thing up real quick. Earl, listen, let's get the big Wednesday stuff out of the way. You got one more last, because this might be our last time with William Katt.
Well, does it get...
I'll be dead soon.
That kind of leads into my question. Like, when I watch that movie, I kind of get sad now, in 2020. because you look at, obviously Sam Melville, we lost early, and there's Jan Michael Vincent and Shopping Cart. And does it get sad for you when you look back? Like Brian Dennehy's. Some of the people you've worked with are no longer with us, and we're at that age where.
You're at that age where you think about your mortality a lot, and I remember just a few years ago just before I lost my mom, and I'd say, Mom, half my friends are gone. And she said, Billy, all of my friends are gone. That's the reality. A long life, it's a blessing, but it's, as Garth Brooks said, every blessing is a curse. Every curse is a blessing, and that's what that is. But I'm happy to be here. Still have kids. I still get to work occasionally. I have friends. I don't have an agent anymore, or I won't audition anymore. And I'm blessed I don't have to work. But I do work when friends call me that are your age, that are still in the business, and they call me up, and I'm happy to go work and play on the set. And that's what it is for me these days. It's playing. I have a lot of fun.
And you still have it.
I did a small role in a Ryan Phillippe film, the second, and I have a film coming out on Lifetime called Hark for the holidays, and I just did a film with Bruce Stern called Overrun, and that's great. So, I still mess around.
Don't look down behind your back.
Who is that? I don't know. Okay.
I guess it's your.
That's my wife saying, "Hey, that's it, guys. Okay." She just gave me the sign.
All right, we're gonna close this thing up. Earl, anything else?
Just thank you for doing this. I'm sure this wasn't on your bucket list to talk to two unknown comics. But,
no, man, I've had a ball. You guys are the best. Thank you so much,
Mr. Katt. If the Comedy Store ever gets running again, you got to go see Earl perform. He's fantastic.
I will. I'll go and do that. I'll heckle him.
Oh, please do. I do some big Wednesday jokes. I'll throw in, maybe I'll sing a few bars of Believe It or Not, and we'll just have a blast.
Yeah, do whatever you can to embarrass me. Thank you.
Well, you can embarrass me by just yelling something. We'll talk about life.
I'll be obnoxious as I can, okay?
The honor was all mine. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
You're a good man. Thank you so much, everybody. William Katt, follow his Facebook page. Obviously, Earl, he's on social media, Inappropriate Earl. You guys were great. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes. I hope you enjoyed it. The great Brody Stephen, enjoy it. 818 till I die. Good night, everybody.
Your pain. If everything is coming your way, you're facing the wrong lane. Bullet head, by the moon until you're crazy dead. Bullet head, got a different kind of true. Bullet head, yes, you are in danger. I shot just like you. How many roads must a man walk down before he admits he's lost? And do you really drive this way? Just to piss me off. Boldly going nowhere, trouble busting through. Yeah, I'm rolling slowly, but I'm ahead of you. Bullet head, by the moon until you're crazy dead. Bullet head, got a different kind of true. Bullet head, yes, you are in danger. I drive just like you. Well, I'm a lover, I'm a run, baby. Well, I'm a bullet head. Come on, baby. Well, I'm a bullet head. Hurt me. bullet head. Got a different kind of true. Bullet head. Yes, you are a danger. I drive just like